Hi, welcome to Ocean Yemi's channel. Um, because the last video of the Barbadians in Republic didn't turn out properly, so I thought I would redo it basically. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put up some couple videos of Barbados, and also there is also a I think he's a celebrity star, I don't know, over here, saying that how the Bajans are going to regret being Republican, all that stuff. But it's only a small article. So he's already trying to put a negative on it already. See, and it hasn't even been that long since they became a republic. But obviously people will come out and they certain peoples will come out and they will say what they have to say because they're trying to put a down on them becoming a republic. And I am going to replay that one with the where they're explaining about the history of Barbados again because I feel it's important to play that because you have to see that, understand. Okay, it's okay. You have to understand that they were fighting for to change things from a long time, removing the Nelson statue. That was one, and also they spoke about the houses and stuff. Hi, Christine. Um, in the in the what am I saying now? In the in the audio, you also hear when they're talking about a place, some plantation where they weren't allowed to go into and stuff like that. But it talks a lot about the history, a lot. So I might go and I might play that again, but I'm gonna play the little videos that I've got so far. Okay, so we're gonna play a little bit of them sound bites. There is actually a museum in Barbados dedicated to the history of Barbados as well, which I found out the other day. So a group went over there and they took like slides of the what was inside of the museum. So they were planning. They was doing a lot of things before even before they came to this conclusion that they wanted to be a republic. It probably was in the works for a long time because you never know. You don't know what's going on. Sometimes if you're not really following a country hard enough, you don't know. But I can tell that it's probably been in the works for a long time. Okay, so they wanted to change up things from ages, not just now. So yes, I will probably. I'm gonna re-show the pictures of Rihanna and that getting her honors and stuff, and she was very happy to take the honors because in the video she also says that how there's nothing better than getting honored on the soil to which you were born. Right. So when your country, where your parents originated from, sees you and give you your honors in that place, that says a lot. And like I said, it's a good that they have made this change because who knows, they might become big like China or something. You don't know, right? You never know, innit? So I think Jamaica is also looking at what Barbados have done, and they're saying, "Look, right, Prime Minister Horness, you need to actually look at what's going on elsewhere. Maybe this might start a whole chain reaction. Yeah, this might start a whole chain reaction. Maybe all the other Caribbean islands might follow. So those of us who is over here in the UK, all over, most probably, if we have to end up going back for whatever reason, because you never know, ties could change. They might do say something. They might, you never know, innit? So when the Republic, right, they might be better off as a republic because they don't have to answer to the Queen for none. They don't have to answer for the law. They don't have to answer for anything. And they might make them a stronger country. That's what I was trying to say the other day, but it was so noisy I could not deal. Okay, so that's why I had to redo the video over. Yeah. So I'm going to show Rihanna saying how happy she is to receive the honours from her from her from Barbados counterparts and stuff. Um, I'm going to show an article with Jeremy Clarkson putting in his 5 pence in, and Jamaica's been talking about it as well. Well, maybe they should make the move and do it because they need to. It might change everything over there. I mean, ain't going to change the poverty side of things because poverty's always around. But it might change because they do because Tate and Lai is from Jamaica anyway. So most of the resources is still from Jamaica. And I'm going to ignore the phone. I'm going to ignore the phone. Hold on. I'm going to put on the video because people, first I don't get no calls and then now all of a sudden I'm getting calls. Hold on a minute.
The people, man, the people, y'all are the true heroes of Barbados, and I take y'all with me wherever I go. I'm so proud to be a Bajan. I'm gonna be a Bajan till the day I die. This is still the only place I've ever called home. I love Barbados, I love you guys, and I pray that the youth continue to push Barbados forward. I'm so proud of you, Prime Minister Mia Motley. Thank you so much for honoring me in this way. I have traveled the world and received several awards and recognitions, but nothing compares to being recognized in the soil that you grew in. So I thank you so much for this. The people, man, the people, y'all are the
And it's nice to hear her talk like this. Right? Okay. Well, let me put up what Christine's saying. I feel all the Caribbean countries will remove the Queen and become republic. Yeah, I feel so too. I think it's a gradual thing. It just takes one person to do something. It's just like the slavery rebellion, isn't it? It took one lot of them to do something, then it started a rippling effect. But my daughter's up, so like you might hear in the background. Okay, let me take off the mic. Oh, yeah, this is inside of that museum, by the way. Sorry. They didn't put no sound to this. Oh, they should have, put a little sound to it. But I think I might have to show this one again, so I'm going to take this one off.
From the darkest days of our past and the appalling atrocity of slavery, which forever stains our history, the people of this island forged their path with extraordinary fortitude. Emancipation, self-government, and independence were your waypoints. Freedom, justice, and self-determination have been your guides. You are the guardians of your heritage, firm craftsmen of your fate.
His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, will now be conferred with the Order of Freedom of Barbados by Her Excellency, the Most Honorable Dame Sandra Mason, President of Barbados.
Right, now I'm going to proceed to play that history thing what I played the last time, but this time I'm going to let it play all. No, first I'm going to show you all the articles, then put it at the end because it's long. Okay, so I'm going to show the articles of them being a republic, little sound bites and all that stuff because you have to put in these important stuff. These stuff have to be archived as well. And also show what Jeremy Clarkson had to say because he put in his 5 pence into it.
I, Sandra Prunella Mason, do swear that I will well and truly serve Barbados in the office of President, so help me God.
Between the two.
From the darkest days of our past and the appalling atrocity of slavery, which forever stains our
simultaneously as the all colors are marched off the parade, the Queen's standard is lowered.
We therefore present to you the designee for National Hero of Barbados, Ambassador Robin Rihanna Fenty. May you continue to shine like a diamond and bring honor to your nation.
Possessing a clear sense of who we are and what we are capable of achieving, in the year 2021, we now turn our vessel's bow towards the new republic. We do this so that we may seize the full substance of our sovereignty.
On behalf of a grateful nation, but an even prouder people, we therefore present to you the designee for National Hero of Barbados, Ambassador Robin Rihanna Fenty. May you continue to shine like a diamond and bring honor to your nation by your words, by your actions, and to do credit wherever you shall go. God bless you, my dear. Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely hurting them that how Barbados became a republic because Jeremy Clarkson put in his 5 pence. I wish it was a video because you have to hear it from the horse's mouth sometime. It burning them now, isn't it? It burning them because they always look down on people. They look down on the people, on places. They only right. The only thing is, I think their tourism will get bigger, if anything. You know what I mean? Because they can control their tourism, they can control a lot of things over there. Then, like I said, they don't have to answer to the Queen. They don't have to say nothing. Right? They can just do their movements. So, like I said, Andrew Holness, you need to take note. You need to take note. You need to take note of what's going on. So let's see what Mr. Moni Clarkson got to say. And he only gets a small piece on it anyway. Look at this. Look at this. He's got a small, tiny, tiny, titchy little piece. So Jeremy Clarkson thinks Barbados is going to regret becoming a republic. He's wrong. So Jeremy Clarkson thinks Barbados is going to regret becoming a republic. Clarkson is, of course, entitled to his view, which is expressed in a recent column for The Times. But while some have expected the debate to be around the relationship between Caribbean island and the Queen, what followed seemed to me to be the worst case of attempted national assassination by the way of submerging or imaginable. Or was it just a simple dose of insecure sour grapes? Barbados is going to become the Taiwan that China never had. He says soon China will exercise domination over land and our beaches will no longer be public. Sandy Lane, a luxury tourist resort, will be torn down, and all because Clarkson says so. Rather than debate about the island, the history and its links to Britain's slave trade or the rising influence of China, highly a novel issue. Clarkson instead cried that Chinese wolf is going to swallow an entire island whole. Mention was made in passing of existence of Hong Kong, but there weren't any suggestion as to how microstates couldn't be accepted to resist China. So he has a whole heap to say. Yes, and that. Anyways, let's see. The really hard question will remain regardless of the weather readers distracted from the issues. How, for example, many may poor past countries be associated, given that much of the wealth and infections which is presently enjoyed in Europe was extracted from former colonies? Have they started on a level the playing field? And if not, what is the reason for that? So, like I said, Clarkson is having a cow right now. Okay, really. Clarkson is having a cow right now. Can you come from under the cover, please? Thank you. Right, he's having a cow right now. Literally, literally. That's what's going on now. Because, like I said, there's sugar, the rum. Because they can produce cider over here, they can produce potatoes, but there's certain things that they get from foreign countries that is bought over here. So all that will change now. So even though they are trying to adapt some of their things so they can be able to grow certain things, England is a very cold place right now. It's very cold over here right now. Right, if you're not from the UK, it's very cold over here. So not everything can grow over here. It needs to be in a generated situation. Sugar can't be made over here. I don't think they can make sugar over here. I don't think so, because Tate and Lyle, like I said, is from Jamaica. So I don't know. Ray and Nephews is from Jamaica, which they get here. Some rums can be made over here. Cogsburg, Cosberg, I think it's called. But yeah, but basically they make ciders over here. There's a lot of apples and stuff, apple places. Stop it. There's a lot of apple places and lot of stuff that is over here. So, anyways, I'm gonna play that song by I played the other day too, because you have to get the history of this too. And I feel it's important that when you're talking about Barbados becoming a republic, you need to look at the history of it, even though there is no visual to it. But I'm gonna let the whole thing play this time round, because I feel there's a lot of important sound bites in there. One, the Nelson statue gets taken down. They start researching certain things. Though Barbados is the British, is have a British influence to it in certain places. It does have a British. It's like Grenada, so there's a lot of British looks to it and lots of stuff. They actually influenced a lot of stuff over there. So the fact that they have taken this big step, I feel, is good. So I'm not going to read all the articles that I did the last time. What I'm going to do, I'm going to let you listen to that soundbite again. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do before I start talking again. Sorry, it's like I got to find it, but I found another one anyway. Hold on a minute.
Does your company need a recipe for
sad about it? Could become sad about it.
Or about how the COVID-19 community aid package, or about how these and other...
The monarchy, the Queen didn't really mean much to them. And of course, there's a general feeling that Barbados, has a new Queen, and that's Rihanna, the singer.
A very different Queen.
There are older people who remember even visits by the Queen going back decades. Some of them were slightly sad about it, thinking that it was, the end of an epoch.
And Matthew, if there isn't this, groundswell of opinion demanding change, how has this actually come about? It wasn't a referendum.
I mean, it has been discussed for years and years, and every political party in Barbados virtually has put declaring a republic in its manifesto, and it was in the Labour Party's manifesto, led by Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister, who came to power in 2018. She had it in her manifesto, along with decriminalising cannabis and legalisation of same-sex marriage. And actually, the question of the republic has been not quite as divisive an issue as the other two. A couple of people I spoke to, though, were unhappy that there hadn't been a referendum and were saying that there should have been more of a debate. And it was a bit like the government cancelling the country's insurance, in the sense that Britain until now has been responsible to a large extent for defending Barbados against theoretical threats, military threats or whatever. And now that will no longer be Britain's obligation.
And Mia Mottley, I know you actually met her, you had a long interview with her. Where did you meet and what was that like?
Well, we met in her official residence, which is a hilltop colonial-era mansion surrounded by lush tropical gardens and very old trees, mahogany trees, breadfruit trees. And as we were speaking, actually, you could hear the screeching of parrots coming from outside. There are also green monkeys, she informed me, but I didn't see any of those.
And that's this mahogany tree here.
Is that a mahogany tree?
Yeah, right. It's the one thing that every time we have bad weather, the first question I ask is the tree okay?
Yeah, because that's beautiful, isn't it? Isn't that incredible?
That's amazing.
She was warm and very friendly. She's a charming, affable figure who was fresh from the Glasgow Climate Summit.
I'm literally today, that's half the reason I'm so tired.
Yeah, I bet.
Because in the last 24 hours, everything has gotten very intense.
She's well liked in Barbados as well. She has a lot of supporters who all describe her as a very intelligent and impressive leader.
And what was her explanation for why she thought now was the moment for Barbados to become a republic?
Well, she tends to present it in terms of severing the last shackles of the colonial era, but also Barbados basically growing up and coming to stand on its own 2 feet.
We are facing some of the most challenging times in our existence, and we need to be able to do so as a confident, creative, disciplined people. And the first step to confidence is understanding that you are as equal to anyone in this world.
Mm-hmm. Under the system until now, the Queen has been a symbolic head of state. She will be replaced with an elected president. And I think that, it's generally felt that this is more normal for an independent country, to have its own head of state, to have a president. And one argument that she and other politicians I spoke to made was that it will allow, every Barbadian child to imagine that they could aspire to this role, to the highest role in the land one day. And so that it was basically an example of Barbados coming of age.
This is a natural step
almost no different from a child leaving a parent's home.
And if they do now have an elected head of state rather than the Queen, will it automatically be the Prime Minister? Will it be a separate position? Is Mia Mottley likely to be a head of state?
Well, no, they've already elected a president, actually, called Sandra Mason. She's going to take on the role on November the 30th and will be the president from then on, the first elected president. She is already the Governor General, which is a position that under the current system has been operating for some time. She, as Governor General, answers to the Queen, and so she knows the Queen and has been essentially the Queen's representative until now, and so she will be replacing the Queen.
Is one of the contributing factors, sort of some of the global movements we've seen over the last year or two with Black Lives Matter. There was the Windrush scandal here. Have all of these things contributed?
I think that in some measure they have. Some analysts I spoke to in London as well as in Barbados suggested that the Windrush scandal and the Black Lives Matter movement had indeed played into the timing of the announcement that Barbados was going to transition to a republic. There have been Black Lives Matter protests in Barbados. These took place last year. The declaration that Barbados was going to become a republic followed those protests. Perhaps the timing of the decision was linked in some way with the world's sort of global reassessment of racism and certainly the colonial era. And of course, Barbados is very much linked with this colonial era and the grim legacy of slavery.
And Matthew, amongst the people you spoke to in Barbados, I know you also spoke to David Denny, who's an activist. What did he say about the cutting of ties with the monarchy?
Well, he's delighted.
I'm very happy that Barbados is becoming a republic.
He's a left-wing activist and president of something called the Caribbean Movement for Peace and Integration, and it was he who led the Black Lives Matter protests in Bridgetown.
Let me hear you. Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Take your lead from
We all know the story about Black Lives Matter, right? Okay, so I'll let it continue.
Happy as he is about the transition to a republic and replacing the Queen with a Barbadian head of state.
We are totally against the invitation for Prince Charles to come here to Barbados to participate in the celebration for our republic.
He deeply resents the presence of Prince Charles at the ceremony, basically saying that Barbados didn't need anyone's permission or endorsement to make this change to the constitution.
Well, he's not sort of seen as a friendly envoy.
Well, not for David Denny. Mia Mottley, by contrast, said that Prince Charles is a friend of Barbados.
Prince Charles not only has been supportive, the fact that he is coming here for the transition is a matter of great pride for us and for him, I believe.
She also was very full of praise for the Queen, describing her as an icon of the past century.
We have the tremendous respect for Her Majesty. I think that she will be recorded as one of the iconic leaders of the modern world.
And so other politicians I spoke to also said that they had a very good relationship with London and they hope that this would continue.
But for protesters like David Denny, part of the problem with London and with the British state is the reluctance to engage with aspects of colonial history, in particular with Britain's role in the slave trade.
Well, this is a big subject, not only in Barbados. I mean, there have been protests in this country, obviously. Statues have been toppled as well. And also there have been protests outside the Wiltshire home of Richard Drax, the Conservative MP, about his property in Barbados.
Give it back! Mr. Drax! Give it back!
he owns the Drax Hall estate, which is a sugar plantation.
In the 1620s, Sir James Drax, an ancestor of the MP Richard Drax, was one of the first English colonists to arrive in Barbados. With huge sugar plantations to run, he became a pioneer of the slave trade in the Caribbean. It's estimated that 30,000 slaves died on the Drax family plantations in Barbados and Jamaica over the next 2 centuries. Something Richard Drax says he deeply regrets, but he doesn't believe he or the current estate should be held responsible for the actions of his ancestors.
Barbados, from its first years as a British colonial outpost in the beginning of the 17th century, has, it basically became a centre for slavery, with Africans being brought across the Atlantic in appalling conditions and then enslaved on sugar plantations. Sugar is still to this day produced in Barbados. David Denny is leading a campaign to have the Drax estate in Barbados. He would like to see it handed over to Barbados, basically. It would be a form of compensation for abuses of the past. And Mia Mottley, though she supports the idea of reparations and has called for reparations, along with several other Caribbean countries, they are asking for Britain to pay reparations for slavery.
It is something that still has to be confronted because what you have is a development deficit. And for us, reparations is about balancing back out the development framework.
I think the general principle is that, in her view, there should have been a post-independence development pact. And she describes it in the same way as a homeowner taking back possession of their home after it's been rented out, and they're finally rid of a tenant, and they discover that there are no windows or doors, and the curtains have been taken, and all these things need to be replaced, and so you have to look for whatever money you can find to do this.
It's not just the past that Barbados is grappling with. There are also concerns about future. Is the new republic about to swap one empire for another? We'll have more from Matthew in just a moment, and we'll hear from the Sunday Times royal editor, Roya Nikar, on what it all means for the monarchy. But first, a message from Westminster.
I'm Henry Zeffman, Chief Political Correspondent to The Times.
And lots of young Barbadians are heading off to Beijing to study Chinese, and so relations with China are very, very good and thriving. And so China is playing an increasingly prominent role in the life of Barbados, to the dismay of some. But to Mia Mottley, her argument is that we can have relations with anyone we want. We're an independent country. And when I asked her about China, actually, a cloud descended over until then sunny visage.
The unconscious bias suggests that we can only exist as pawns of someone. And if it is not the British Empire, it must be the Chinese Empire. Barbados is capable of standing on its own 2 feet and determining who it can borrow and work and otherwise deal with.
I visited one project where the workers were actually Chinese. When I asked the Prime Minister about it, she said that project had been agreed by the previous government, and from now on, she had agreed with the Chinese that they would use predominantly local Barbadian labour, but that they could.
He sounds like he's taking the mickey out of her, No real mickey taking here. Can you hear it? Real mickey kind of laughed. No, I saw like she's using the Chinese as labor, like as a reflection of how they was used in slavery. You taking a mickey now, but anyways.
Bring in the technical experts.
Whenever we've had projects with the Chinese, we've insisted that yes, of course, if you're investing your money, you're entitled to have your technical professionals, but the labour predominantly must come.
It would be nice, wouldn't it, if it could create employment?
It has.
And the whole issue of Chinese workers actually doing the jobs that are being agreed between the two governments is very sensitive and annoys a lot of people, I think.
So, Matthew, this is obviously a big moment for the island of Barbados. It's a big moment for the monarchy here. Is it also a big moment and a sign of things to come, really, in terms of geopolitics? You know, we have had Black Lives Matter, we've had a reckoning with our sort of colonial past and the issues of slavery. Could this lead to other Commonwealth countries wanting to become republics, ones who haven't already? And are we seeing, you know, former British territories being sort of stealthily taken over by Chinese influence?
Yes, you're absolutely right. Experts I spoke to suggested that there will be a domino effect. To some extent, we've already seen a first wave of the Queen's realms declaring themselves republics and going their own way. In the 60s and 70s, some people have spoken about the influence of the Black Power movement and say that it triggered a first wave of independence movements. Trinidad and Tobago, for instance, and Dominica have already declared themselves republics. Now what you could see is a second wave. There are other countries nearby, for instance, who will be watching this very closely. Antigua, further north, for instance, has the Queen as its head of state, but may be tempted to follow suit. It has very close relations with China. And certainly there are a whole panoply of British realms, if you like. I think that's the term to describe countries where the Queen is head of state. Some of them have flown the nest, as it were. But there are still, I think, a dozen or so. And yes, there could be a ripple effect.
So, how does the monarchy view that prospect?
I'm Roya Nikar, and I'm the royal editor of the Sunday Times.
Roya is in Barbados covering the transition and Prince Charles's trip, but she spoke to us on the eve of her travels about the significance of this moment for the British monarchy.
It's a really big moment, actually, because members of the royal family in the past have tended not to attend handovers of realms becoming republics. We have had some members of the royal family back in the day attending independence ceremonies, but in terms of realms becoming republics, this is pretty unique. So I think the message that Charles is sort of sending by going out to this ceremony and spending 2 days in Barbados as it transitions is, I am the next head of the Commonwealth. You are staying in the Commonwealth, Barbados, and let's continue that friendship.
Do we know how the Queen reacted over this? I mean, for her, coming up to her Platinum Jubilee, to be losing part of her realm can't be ideal.
I've spoken to quite a few people about what the Queen's views are on this. And the general consensus is that, look, the Queen is a realist and a pragmatist, and the world changes, and she acknowledges that and embraces it, is the phrase I was used. And I think the Queen has always sort of said, and the palace have always said, it's for each realm to decide their status. It's not for the royal family. It's not for the British government. It's for each realm. Barbados has made this decision after, decades of proposing it. It's finally done it. But I think, as you said, someone who knows the Queen very well, who's travelled with her to a lot of realms, said to me that as much of a pragmatist as she is, there will definitely be a little period of reflection and possibly a tinge of sadness at this moment, because it is a break with links to the past as the Queen looks back on her long reign. And, I think that probably will come with a little bit of nostalgia for her.
Are there also sort of concerns that Barbados is just the latest parts of the Commonwealth to do this? Guyana did it back in the 70s. There haven't been that many
It's
since.
rare.
It's very rare. But is there a chance that this sort of captures a moment, and if Barbados does it, others might follow?
Well, it's really interesting, and I was talking to Professor Philip Murphy, who's a Commonwealth expert about this, and his feeling is Barbados is rare in the sense that it doesn't require a referendum transition, whereas most other Caribbean realms would, the remaining realms.
That's interesting.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because referenda, as we know, and he made the point, are dangerous things politically. And so he doesn't think necessarily there will be a huge trigger effect, but what he does think is that other realms where there is a growing Republican movement, like Jamaica, which has been mumbling away for years about it, like St. Lucia, and other Caribbean countries will be looking to see what happens in Barbados, will be looking to see, whether the popularity of Prime Minister Motley increases because of this. and then they will possibly make their minds up. But I think you have to assume that in the modern age, there is a feeling with some countries that there is still a connotation harking back to times of empire, and these countries want to shake that off.
And we know that Prince Charles is going out for the transition. Do we know how he views this moment?
Again, speaking to people close to him, and he has definitely in the last few years, he has stepped up his travel to Caribbean realms and countries. And I think that's been with one eye with a view to his future role with the Commonwealth. Like the Queen, I think the Prince of Wales recognises that he's quite relaxed about it and sanguine about it, and actually is going out to Barbados to sort of support them and sort of celebrate with them. I think for the Prince of Wales, he has an eye on the future. The status of countries staying within the Commonwealth, which Barbados is doing, is much more important to him, particularly as he's going to be head of the Commonwealth. So I think him being there is a sort of sign of, we respect your decision and we're delighted and glad that you're staying in the family of nations that is the Commonwealth.
And does that tell us anything about how he views the future of the monarchy?
I think it probably tells us that he is fully aware that the nature of the monarchy and the role of the monarchy internationally will change when the time comes and when the Queen is no longer around, and that's already happening now, but that there is still a role to play for the British royal family, and that is, we have a Queen now who is head of the Commonwealth, and we will have a future monarch who it has already been guaranteed now as head of the Commonwealth, and that is the role I think he feels is most important for the royal family to play, rather than this head of state role, which you could argue harks back to times of empire.
You've been listening to Stories of Our Times, a podcast brought to you thanks to the subscribe.
Okay, so we're going to hear about Barbados's history now. I'm going to put it on because, little one is singing and stuff, yeah? Hold on a minute.
I'm in Bridgetown to try to understand what this moment means for the future of Barbados. And people keep telling me, to get what's coming next, you need to look back. From The Guardian, I'm Michael Safi. Today in Focus, Barbados becomes a republic and Britain faces a reckoning. Before we start, just a heads up. Today's episode includes descriptions of torture and other violence. About a half-hour's drive from Bridgetown, the capital of Barbados, is the most shockingly green landscape. There's vegetation everywhere, palm trees, fruit, rich soil, the sounds of birds and crickets. This is where Esther Phillips, the country's poet laureate, grew up.
This was a place where I remember very well my grandmother had planted up this land because we lived off the land. Everything you could think of, pumpkin, Christophine, beans, carrots, beets. It was a childhood where there was a lot of freedom to run and all the fresh air and the fresh fruits, looking down plums and guavas,
Esther's family home was right next to this place called the Drax Hall Estate, a sugarcane plantation. It's been there 400 years and it's still producing sugar today. Her grandfather worked there in the 50s, drawing canes, and their home was surrounded by the estate on the east, south and west. Esther can remember, as a kid, catching glimpses of the people working there and the people running it.
Sometimes in walking home from school, we would find ourselves walking through Drax Hall Yard. So, of course, we saw the plantation house. Sometimes just got a glimpse of these little white children. Then sometimes, of course, there was the overseer that we were all scared of and tried our best to run from. But we did not know why. We knew that this place represented something that was alien to us or was not friendly. What we did not know was the history. We had no idea. I am still processing how it is possible that I grew up all these years not knowing the horror that existed some 100 years ago, not far away from here. Placid and tranquil as this is, right now, under these same lands, you have thousands of slaves who were worked to death. Now the road with the girl walking?
Yeah.
Is this one here?
Esther shows me just up the road to Drax Hall, the plantation house, surrounded on all sides by cane fields. I see. So this is the entry to Drax Hall.
We're going to take you somewhere where you can see them.
And they've put up a couple of barrels with "Sorry, we're closed" and private property on it. In the lead up to the Republic, roads leading to the estate have been closed off. And that wasn't there before. Before you could just walk right in.
No, it was not. So
but Esther knows another way.
All this is Drax Hall land here. All of this. All this that you can see. As far as the eye can see. Yeah. This is so there is the house. That's the house up there. What we're seeing ahead of us is Drax Hall Plantation House, the Jacobean manner. If you were closer, you could see the various gables and components, if you want, of that kind of style. This is what I call, indeed, a witness in stone, because that stone that was cut there, carved stone, that was actually cut by the enslaved at the time. And you could imagine the back-breaking toil that it took to build that place, for which, of course, they've got no credit. And that is the symbol, actually, of the oppression, of the brutality, of the crime against humanity that was committed against my ancestors.
The plantation was established by James Drax, who arrived with his brother William in the 1620s.
They came over from England. They were very poor people, but they are people who decided to come to Barbados to make their fortune, and that's exactly what they did. And it was the largest plantation in Barbados. Clearly would have needed more manpower than most others. And he was also reputed to be among the cruelest of slave owners.
The beauty of this place is beautiful.
We're still learning about what life was like for enslaved people on the Drax estate. Historians have only recently...
I'm looking at the images of this place. It's very big, it's very extraordinary, very luxurious looking. Hold on, I'll show you an image.
recently started studying it. People like Sir Hilary Beckles, a Barbadian who's written about what happened when the Draxes learned of an impending uprising by the Africans working on the plantation. 120 of the leaders were rounded up, he says. 47 were burned alive. 30 men were castrated and left to bleed to death. Barbados then has been called the world's first slave society. At one stage, 80% of the population of the island were enslaved. Keeping them in line and working required unimaginable brutality.
Whippings, the torture, the hangings, the whipping block, all these things, as well, of course, as the raping of the women and sometimes children. I mean, it didn't seem as though there was any savagery that these people did not carry out.
It was eerie standing in fields that were so peaceful, looking up at this magnificent house and imagining this is one of the places where historians believe the plantation model of slavery, the one that spread and took root in the US and across the Americas, was pioneered and perfected. That's because the Drax family were innovators. Beckles, the historian, says they invented a new business model. Instead of transporting African men and women and working them to death, which took about 7 years, he treated the women a little better, kept them healthy enough to have children.
One of the ways to get more slaves, of course, was to let the slaves breed. Yeah. So you encourage them to keep breeding and breeding and breeding. That way you didn't have to buy them. You just had them. You had as many as you wanted.
The history of this place is the history of British rule on Barbados. There were plantations like this all over the island. Cane fields and the model of slavery that made them grow soon spread to Jamaica and across the hemisphere. It made sugar cheap for the first time in European history and made the UK extraordinarily rich. But the cruelty of the model, the estimated 3.1 million Africans that Britain alone condemned to slavery, couldn't be ignored forever. In the 1830s, after more than 200 years, Britain abolished slavery. They paid millions of pounds in compensation to the owners of enslaved people. The Africans transported over and their descendants got nothing. For a century after, many kept working on those same plantations for low pay. Esther says her own grandfather worked on the Drax estate for $1 a week, a pittance. It's strange to imagine that Queen Elizabeth was on the throne by then. It's also strange that, given how crucial this slavery was to both British and Barbadian history, it's easy to visit the island and never hear a word of it. There's just one statue in Bridgetown dedicated to emancipation at the centre of a busy roundabout. Esther talks about this great silence.
I think of actually playing and walking on the bones, practically, of people who were my ancestors, and who were lying there. There was almost like a kind of an indifference, a kind of a silence. I have started to explore the reason for the silence. I asked 2 leading historians in Barbados their thoughts about it. They're convinced it had to do with shame and guilt. Who wants to revisit that kind of trauma? Wants to get out of it, or the appearance of getting out?
Tell me about that silence. What does that mean for someone who doesn't know Barbados?
What the silence means is that people can have a stereotypical idea of Barbados, sun and sea, and some even have this notion of frolicking natives and people sitting under coconut trees drinking coconut water and rum. We depend so heavily on tourism, okay? We know what the tourist market is. Britain is one of our biggest tourist markets, all right? Do you want to offend them? Do you want to talk too much about this past slavery, which might cause people to feel disturbed and bothered? Or are you going to continue to cover it up and pretend it never existed or that it doesn't matter anymore? Now, that silence, I think, is wrong. It's wrong because even though it is buried, even though the truth is buried to some extent, in very many ways it is not, because what is showing up is that the past is still with us.
Well, it's woven into the very fabric of our life, all aspects of our life. You can't enslave, loot, and plunder a people for multiple generations over hundreds of years and expect that that will not have an imprint on the present.
David Commichong is an activist and diplomat. He's been campaigning for a republic all his life. Part of what he works on is assessing the ongoing impact of slavery, the way it still echoes hundreds of years later.
Health is a very, very clear area because the Caribbean populations have the highest incidence of chronic non-communicable diseases. The experts tell us that we can trace this factor right back to those centuries of compressed terror and tension on the plantations of the Caribbean, which in fact were the world's first concentration camps. You're talking about people who lived, whose daily experience was the experience of living in a concentration camp over hundreds of years. That's what we're talking about. So not only the stress and the tension, but also the very deficient diets that they were subjected to. And so that has resulted in a present-day population that is uniquely vulnerable to diseases like diabetes and hypertension.
Barbados should be a wealthy country. Over the centuries, it's produced a lot and exported a lot. But that money was used to build another country.
You go to Britain, you go to London, and you see those fantastic buildings and that massive infrastructure. Where did that come from? Ultimately, that came from the looting and plundering of colonies like Barbados.
Today, the Caribbean has a debt problem. David says it's because when the countries of the region became independent, their leaders found they were building nations virtually from scratch.
The Caribbean is one of the most highly indebted regions in the world. That money hasn't gone into building armies or fighting wars. Those loans have gone into building infrastructure, building roads, building airports, building schools, building polyclinics, expanding the public service and so forth. But it has come at a cost.
You can measure the legacy of colonialism in concrete things like money or people's health, but it's also symbolic, carried around in people's minds. And it's that mental impact that's part of what's driving Barbados to become a republic.
Part of it is symbolism, but symbolism is important because for the past 55 years, we have been laboring under the symbolism of having Queen Elizabeth II, this English woman born in England, with her first loyalty being to the nation and people of England. We have had her as our head of state, as the person who embodies our unity and our legitimacy as a nation and the people. I mean, that's just slightly ridiculous. How can the Queen of England, born in England, living thousands of miles away from us, not connected to our culture, our history, and our mores, how can she embody the struggle of the African people of Barbados against enslavement and exploitation and their struggle for dignity? It's not possible.
The British knew symbols were important. Bridgetown, the capital, is still full of them, and they're impressive. The Parliament building, the third oldest anywhere in the world, is like a huge Gothic cathedral, one of the tallest buildings in the city. In the 60s, the Union Jack came down from over it, replaced with the new Barbados flag.
Your Royal Highness, this is a very proud moment in the history of the people of Barbados. I am glad, as I am sure that the members of my government are equally glad that we were born at a time when we could see this eventful day.
The country was independent, but found it wasn't entirely free to decide its destiny. The idea of cutting ties with the Queen has been around since the beginning. But people worried about how Britain would react, and they had other priorities, like building a new country. It wasn't until the 1990s that a government commission finally said, "It's time, let's do this." Even then, it would still take more than 20 years for Barbados to make the leap. There's a statue here that kind of tells the story. More than 200 years ago, before there was even one in London, Bridgetown unveiled a bronze statue of Admiral Horatio Nelson, the British naval hero who defeated the French at the Battle of Trafalgar. Alexander Downes, who grew up in the city, used to pass by the statue in what was then called Trafalgar Square all the time.
So you'd ask the question, like, what is this? And you're just like, oh, that's the Lord Nelson statue. And it wasn't just what was said, it was how it was said. It's like, oh, that's the Lord Nelson statue. It's like, okay, so what is the Lord Nelson statue? Oh, Lord Admiral Nelson is this guy who saved Barbados from the French, and it's the Battle of Trafalgar. And you're like, oh, okay, it sounds pretty cool, you know, like, this guy saved Barbados. Awesome, he's a hero.
And that was what he believed, what everyone told him for years, until he went to university to study history and was lectured by people like Hilary Beckles and began to ask questions.
And so I began to do some digging on my own, and I didn't even have to do that much digging because there were so many calypsos written about it, songs written about it.
Well, he want burning, cause he in the use. He want pelting, in the dumpers garbage refuse. When at them meetings I hear the quarreling, and I ask them who this man, I couldn't believe that they talking about Nelson. Cause I didn't know that he caused so much trouble. I didn't know he brings so much pain to the people. Standing up in town so peaceful.
That's when your eyes start to open, you're like, whoa.
And not other people.
What he learned was that Nelson wasn't just the most celebrated defender of the British Empire that had enslaved so many Barbadians. He had actively opposed and repeatedly voted against efforts to abolish slavery in British colonies. And hundreds of years later, his statue still stood in the middle of the capital of a country, 90% of whom were descendants of those same enslaved people. Alex wasn't the first to realise this and to wonder, what the hell was that statue still doing there? From the 1980s onwards, there had been a fierce public debate about Nelson. Lots of people wanted him taken down, but many still worried it would cost too much or send the wrong message to Britain, where most of the tourists were still coming from, and where Nelson was still, indisputably, a hero. So, the government came up with a compromise.
What they did was essentially to flip the direction the statue was facing.
They literally spun Nelson around 180 degrees. So he no longer looked over Bridgetown's main thoroughfare.
We're not moving it, but we're moving it.
That probably seemed a bit unsatisfying, even back in 1989. But from the vantage point of now, in the eyes of a young generation of Barbadians with no memory of the colonial era and a growing understanding of what really happened on their island, it was absurd, unacceptable. It was like dry tinder, waiting for a match. And then, in May 2020, an African-American, George Floyd, was murdered on camera in the streets of the city of Minneapolis.
You know, I've seen what's happening around the world. People are waking up, supporting Black Lives Matter, the people in North America, the protests all over the world. I understand it. And I said to myself, well, in Barbados, what are we doing? We have a colonial past. We have a past that's steeped in racism. What are we doing, you know? And I know like the statue, it literally is just a symbol of something greater, but my thought was if we can start with this, it's just brick and mortar. If we can start with this, then we can get the ball rolling to start addressing some bigger issues.
So he started with his friends, taking their temperatures on it.
I literally said, what do you guys think about like the statue? And they're like, oh, that statue needs to come down, you know, like, I was like, you don't feel like a movement to like get this thing. They're like, yeah, you know, you could try it. Like, you know, your friends support you. Your friends support you no matter what you say. So they were like, yeah, you know, sure, try it. I literally started this thing on Twitter. And I just tweeted, it's like, starting a petition, this is why it's important. And I think I did that maybe like 6 p.m. the night. And, you know, I left it. I went and played some PlayStation, went to bed. And I woke up in the morning, it was like 1,000 signatures. My inbox is blowing up. So I'm like, oh, okay. This is a bit unexpected, you know, but this is cool. And then, you know, again, the media calling me and they're like, so what's the next step? I'm like, next step? I was like, okay, maybe I need to like actually, I didn't expect that level of support, you know, because I felt strongly about it, but I didn't know that everyone else did. And so like I sat down and I formulated like, you know, I'm going to do this open letter to the Prime Minister if and when we get 10,000 signatures, and this is what I'm going to write, etc. And you know, within the space of like a couple weeks, we had got, you know, 10,000 signatures, sent the letter to the PM, and that triggered a whole set of meetings. And it was in that time that I realized that I think Barbados has reached a point of social consciousness where things were ready to happen.
There was still some pushback. People who thought the past was just that, over, and had nothing to do with the future.
Why do you want to move this thing? It's been there before you were even born. You know, have some respect for your history. I'm like, but, you know, 10 years from now, what I do today is going to be our history as well. It's like, so am I bound to eternity to accept what's always happened? Or can I shape my own future and in doing so shape, you know, history for people to reflect upon? And I think that's where my generation, that's how we think.
On November 16, 2020, Alex and the movement behind him won. After more than 200 years, Lord Nelson's statue came down.
Take down Nelson. Take down Nelson. Take down Nelson. Put up a pigeon. Put up a pigeon.
There was a ceremony, music on the main stage, and dancing, while behind it, the statue, now on its back in a wooden cage, was lifted onto the bed of a truck and driven away. In her speech that day, the Prime Minister, Mia Mottley, acknowledged that taking the statue down was symbolic, but that symbolism mattered.
This government has been very clear that national consciousness and identity come at the core of the nation state. And that if we do not know who we are, if we are not clear what we will fight for, then we are doomed.
What do you think it means that it's succeeded now? What does it tell you about Barbados and about the mindset of especially young Barbadians?
I think we're ready for change.
The PM felt the same way. The day the statue came down, the government announced that in a year's time, Barbados was going to finally break free of the monarchy. It was going to become a republic with a president, a largely symbolic office, occupied by a Barbadian. Before I came here, I expected this would be a moment of national joy, parades, parties. But one thing that surprised me is that's not really the case. People are for this, overwhelmingly so. But it's like they still have more important things to worry about.
You're going to find certain sections that are head over heels, like me. I'm ready to, like, you know, do the most. And then you're going to find certain sections that are against it, like Pearson's like, why are we even changing? But then you're going to find many Barbadians who are just like, yeah, I guess it's cool, you know, like, we're going to wake up, you know, December 1st and nothing's really going to change. It's going to be the same country, you know? So it's really just more of a symbolic gesture, which I think is really where people are. And so for people, their main focus is the tangibles, like, you know, how do I eat tomorrow? Like, will I have a job tomorrow? Becoming a republic, if you put them on like a hierarchy of needs, it's probably not the number one thing needed. But I always tell people that doesn't mean it's not important. Like, more than one thing can be true at the same time. And like, sometimes I think that can be a very difficult concept for people to grasp, because it's not something that you can hold. It's not something you can see. It's something that's very philosophical. But years down the line, you see how these things then shape how you are as a people. So I think it's something like that where in time we will see like how valuable it was. And I think the great thing about it is that it's not being set for us, we're setting it ourselves.
Coming up, what the present owes the past, and what many say the man who inherited the Drax estate owes Barbados.
Let me just have a sip of my lime squash.
This is Jonathan Smith in his natural habitat, a little restaurant on the beach in Bridgetown. A few years ago, Smith left a stressful life working in British investigative journalism for a sea change. He chucked it all in and followed his wife to Barbados. But he couldn't get away that easily. In 2020, an old journalist colleague gave him a ring.
Well, I was sort of just having a cold beer, swinging in my hammock, and
all right.
and the phone rang, and it was some chap called Paul Lashmar, who seemed to want to keep me busy and give me something to do.
Lashmar was working on a story for The Observer. Over the years, as more had been learned about the Drax Plantation and its dark history, people had wondered, who owns it these days?
Paul wanted me to confirm who really owned it. So I just set about doing what I used to do, finding the documents. And as always, one person tells me to go to another place, and that person tells me to go back to the place I've just come from. But eventually, I found myself to the right offices, the Land Tax Department of the Revenue Authority here in Barbados. And after a number of visits, I was able to get hold of the document, which of course is quite a simple document really, but it's quite clear in what it says, and at this stage I might have to take my sunglasses off and put my reading glasses.
Okay, it doesn't diminish the drama of this moment, though, let me assure you.
So what we have here, basically, I've got three documents, and one of those documents is the statement of account for Drax Hall Plantation, and it says the owner is Richard G, which stands for Grosvenor, Plunkett Ernley Earl Drax, and it's there in black and white.
Richard Grosvenor Plunkett Ernley Earl Drax, a Tory MP. In fact, one of the wealthiest people in the UK Parliament. Drax is outspoken, a hardline Brexiteer, anti-immigration.
We are full. That is the practicality of the situation we find ourselves in, and we have to do something about it. And I welcome the way the government is going. I hope we have a firm and fair system so that people who come into this country have visas, have references, have to put money into a bank account so that we can count them in and, if necessary, we can count them out.
And on at least one occasion, a critic of the conduct of Black Lives Matter protesters. He's a direct descendant of the Draxes that established that plantation, who perfected a model of slavery that made the family incredibly rich, money they used to extend Charborough House, their Grade A listed mansion, shielded from the outside world by the landmark Great Wall of Dorset that runs for about 3 miles. As a reminder of where some of that wealth came from, there's a road that bisects the estate. It's called Sugar Hill. And Drax's name is still on the title of the property in Barbados. It's a working plantation that still generates money from producing sugarcane. Drax inherited it a few years ago. He's effectively the owner. His most recent register of members' interests says he's administering the property and will take control of it in due course. Drax rarely comments on this history. In 2010, when he first stood for Parliament, he said, "I can't be held responsible for something that happened 300 or 400 years ago." He said it was an attempt to smear him. "They're using the old class thing," he said, "and that's not what this election is about. It's not what I stand for, and I ignore it." Drax spoke again for Paul and Jonathan's story. He said he was keenly aware of the slave trade in the West Indies and said the role of, quote, "my very distant ancestor was deeply, deeply regrettable." He went on, "But no one can be held responsible today for what happened many hundreds of years ago. This is part of the nation's history, from which we must all learn." When she was a girl, playing near Drax Hall, Esther had no idea of its brutal past, nor who it still belonged to.
We just knew it was Drax Hall, but we did not know who owned it. There were white overseers and managers who lived there or, they were in charge. But we did not know who the owners were.
When did you find out for sure who the owners were?
Well, I don't have any legal documents or legal proof, but to the best of my knowledge, it is still in the Drax family.
Do you mind if I show you something? Just one second. Esther, what I've got here, you can grab that. It's not on this page, but this is a legal document which shows who actually owns this property. And if you go to the second page...
Who does? Richard Plunkett. That's Drax?
Yeah.
That's Drax. Those are the names. I recognize those names. Richard Plunkett, some kind of Earl something. Yeah, that's Drax. So you do have a legal document showing they still own the property.
So that's proof that...
That's right.
This is still owned by Richard Drax.
That's right.
I mean, what do you make of that, to know that this property, where so much damage was done for generations, damage that you say continues to echo today, it's owned by somebody who sits in the British Parliament, is in fact one of the wealthiest landowners the British Parliament today?
It's part of that whole colonial burden that we still bear, where there's a sense of entitlement, that these are people who feel that they have a right to it.
If you were in front of him right now, if you could talk to him, what would you say?
I would say to him, "Mr. Drax, I'm not speaking from a position of hatred. To hate you would be to allow the system of slavery and all that power structure to win a second time. And I will not give you that privilege. I would like to say to you, Mr. Drax, that you need to listen to your conscience. To say that the past is behind you, it is not true. The blood of James and William Drax, that blood runs in your veins, which means that they are still with you. And the consequences of all that they have done, those consequences are with you as well. You are culpable. You are responsible, because if the past is behind you, then the wealth should be put behind you as well. So if you are still benefiting from that wealth, you are just as culpable as those who accumulated the wealth. So you must listen to your conscience. You are in a position to help, so do something about it, Mr. Drax.
Colonialism has deep roots in Barbados. Slavery lasted for hundreds of years, and liberation is the project of centuries too. Emancipation was one step, independence another, and so too is becoming a republic today. But it's not the end. The Drax estate is just one way that the past still lives today. Cases like this one form the heart of a wider appeal by countries in the Caribbean and across the formerly colonised world, for countries in Europe that got rich through colonisation to make reparations. That might mean funding development programs or forgiving debt. Caribbean countries are planning to step up the pressure in the years ahead, including the Republic of Barbados.
We're not begging for anything. We're saying that all that we're asking for has been paid for already by blood, sweat, tears, and free labor. Anything now that is given has already been earned.
That's it for today. If you want to read more of Michael Safi's reporting on this,
I hate when I have that big old gap in between. Anywho, I went and looked up about Mr. Drax himself, Mr. Dracula himself. Okay? Mr. Dracula, or Mr. Drax. This is Mr. Drax, okay? So wealthy MP urged to pay up for his family slave trade past. Richard Drax, the Conservative MP for South Dorset, has inherited the Drax Hall plantation in Barbados after his father's death in 2017. A wealthy Tory MP is facing demands to pay reparations for his family part in the Caribbean slave trade after the Observer revealed that he now controls the plantation where his ancestors created the first slave works sugar plantation in British Empire almost 400 years ago. The MP for South Dorset, Richard Drax, has inherited the 250 hectare Drax Hall plantation in Barbados from his father. Inquiries by the Observer have established his father died in 2017. Drax has not yet declared the land or his properties in the Parliamentary Register of Members' Interest. Last week, leading figures in Caribbean Communities Reparations Commission described that Drax Hall plantation as a killing field and a crime scene from the tens of thousands of African slaves who died there in terrible conditions between 1614 and 1836. The Drax also owned a slave plantation in Jamaica, which they sold in 18th century. Sir Hilary Bronckis, Paramount Barbadian historian of slavery, said Drax must acknowledge the wealth brought to the family by slavery. If Richard Drax was in front of me now, I would say, look, Mr. Drax, the people of Barbados and Jamaica are entitled to reparation justice. And it goes on. Anyways, we take a look at the Drax estate itself. So this is the house itself. And as you can see, there is a book made about it, or about the Drax estate. So the Drax Hall, built in 1650s by the Drax family, is thought to have been constructed either by the brothers William Drax, 1607, 1691, and Colonel Sir James Drax, 1609, 1661, or by Sir James' son, Colonel Henry Drax. Drax Hall is the oldest of the only tree Jacob mansions remaining in the Western Hemisphere. Barbados is a home to two of the three, and the other being Sir Nicholas Abbey, while Virginia has Beacon's Castle. The Barbados Tourism Authority lists Drax Hall as one of the 7 wonders of Barbados. But unlike St. Nicholas Abbey, it is not a cultural centre and is not open to the public. It remains the property of the Drax family. Certainly, up until very recently, they continued to make annual visits to still operational sugar plantations. From 1642, Sir Drax became the second man to cultivate sugarcane in the Caribbean. The first was Colonel James and Holdip. It was Drax's integrity that the perfectly Dutch technique for producing sugar, a far more complex operation than processing cotton or tobacco. And it's established that the Drax fortune, however, as pointed out by the Matthew Parker author of the excellent book The Sugar Barons, James Drax, holds the district this honour of being seemingly the first or among the first to convert from using the labour where the worker works off a debt and then goes free. I don't know whether you can hear me, I have to check. Goes free. To the enslaved labour, where the worker works for nothing, has no rights, and is never free. The Drax family are the oldest of the sugar dynasties on the Barbados. Sir James' brother William the art of sugar processing to Jamaica in 1669, and his brother-in-law, Colonel Christopher Carleton, took it to I can't say. Oh, I can never say the places' names. I see them. Anyway, Sir James' son Henry was said to be the wealthiest planter in 17th century Barbados, and Henry's first son cousin Carleton found the site extent Carleton College at St. John. The sugar plantation in 1834, 2 years before slavery was abolished. The Drax Hall established at 18. Oh, the Drax Hall estate had 189 slaves working a massive 879 acres. Between 1825 and 1834, the estate produced an average of 163 tons of sugar and rum as well. See, and they profited. They made a lot of money from it, for what I'm reading here. So, though that estate is a very beautiful one, it carries a great deal of history. I'm sure if I dig a bit deeper, I'll find out more information on the Drax Hall estate. And no wonder why the man is saying that it's not me, that was done years ago, right? Obviously, he's living good, he's enjoying his life, he's getting no kickback from it, so he's still making money off of the blood of people. So, yeah, that's all I want to say, really. And you see, they also have plantation in Jamaica. So let's look at this house again. This place. And they still have the working sugar places there going on in Barbados. So they're still doing sugar. So obviously in Jamaica they must still be doing rum from there, which is exactly what I said before. And imagine, I didn't even listen to the soundbite before this, okay? So Barbados have every right to get what is due to them. Every right. And I ain't wronging them for nothing. All the actions they're taking, I think most other Caribbean countries need to do the same, because the blood of the sweats, like I said, Tate and Lyle really should be taken. She really should be, definitely taken. I've done about Cogswell, Ray and Nephews, I think, was another working plantation because it's named after the plantation owners, the Ray and Nephew. If you know what's going on, you know what's going on in it, right? I'm not saying that we ain't looking into the present because everything from the past goes right into the present, okay? So Barbados, you did a good thing. Like I said, good on you. You took a step. Now, other Caribbean countries, you need to go take your steps now. Don't just talk about it, just do it. Because, we have this thing where we like to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and we not do, and then afterwards time pass, and we don't do nothing. Or we start to do something and then we get inconsistent and stuff like that. So, Jamaica, looking at you right now. Jamaica, the other countries, Caribbean countries, come on, come on, come on. Grenada, Guyana, I can't remember all of the countries surrounding all the Caribbean countries. You need to take your steps. You have a right to the lands, the spaces, all that stuff, because they have left their monuments there, right? In certain parts of Jamaica, when Ainsley Harriott did, when he was looking back into himself, I think, and Noel, the other one, they went to the places, and you'll see the places where they had certain things like the sugar plantation, where some of them was working plantations, literally working plantation, working houses. The slave cemeteries it's not well kept. They should be well kept. They should be well honoured. They shouldn't just be in the middle of nowhere, wherever. That's why people need to follow the Gullah Geechee Queen on what she's doing. She's trying to keep all the sites, all the graveyards, the sites of the spaces where slaves was, etc., etc. Whether people care to believe in slavery or not, but to be honest, the signs are all there. So you cannot disagree with monuments and certain stuff that is there. I mean, a castle you got to pay to go in, which I feel you should not pay to go in to see the places, because you have to see the places where they are. Even in certain parts of England, there are certain places, West Indian Docks, okay, Black Boy Lane, okay. So I don't need to say no more. Barbados, you made a good choice. You made a good stand. And if Jeremy Clarkson ain't happy with it, that's for him business and for them business. Because what happens is when you pull away and you turn into other things, that means that all the stuff that they normally get gets dried up. It stops coming here. Okay? And even though I'm over here, yeah, some of us might feel it, the burn, that we can't get certain things. We can't get cocoa, we can't get this, we can't get that. Because places have become independent of their country. And even though that man took taking a mickey and he's laughing at them and all this stuff and all that stuff, I hope the lady runs the thing good. I really do. If she runs that thing good, good on her. If that prime minister do good job, and she'll turn to a dictator or nothing in the long run, because Fidel Castro did the same thing. He closed up the borders of the country, everything. Okay? If you read up on Fidel Castro, I can't remember, there's a few of them. Even the Japanese, they did the same thing. They cut off certain things, right? Though it's dictatorship, but sometimes it's for the betterment of the people. Sometimes, in most cases, sometimes it's not. So there's two edges to the sword, okay? So I'm not gonna prolong and go on because it's all there in the matrix. Yeah, we can see we see that the guy is living good off of the backs of the people, the blood of the sugar. Okay, and so I don't know what else to say on that. All right, but what I'm saying is, if you have come to the video and it's near the end, you need to listen to all the sound bites that is put in, because when you hear from the horse's mouth, you hear how they mock people, because they feel that black people can't run nothing. Basically, that's what they're trying to say. Black people can't run nothing. So if this lady does her thing and she knows what she's doing and she's about that life, Barbados will flourish. Like I said, I hope Barbados flourish. I really, really, really do. I hope you flourish, because if you flourish, the other Caribbean countries will look at you, the prime ministers, them, or whoever, and they will take the same step. Okay? And it needs to be ongoing till it's done, till it's sorted. If the monarchy or the so-called monarchy have to come over to do that cut off, so be it, right? Because they have pillaged, raped, maimed, done everything in the past, and they're still doing it now. We're still suffering from post-slavery syndrome to this day. Okay, some of us have been able to go back to Africa and try or expat to Africa, or go to Africa to go to re-find ourselves, to go to find out who we are. Some people is against that. I don't know what's all that about, but whatever the reason is, we are still suffering from PSTD. Right? We are still suffering from the we're still suffering from, as Jill Gary says, post-slavery syndrome. So whether people wanna accept it or not accept it, it's there, right? See, you see how grand this place is. Look how grand this house is. So if this one is like this over, I'm thinking this is the one over here. I don't know where this. It doesn't really say where it's the one in Barbados or not. It doesn't say. So if this house looks like this, what does that mansion of a place look like? Okay, and the amount of people that was on the Drax estate, toiling, making sugar, making rum, toiling, dying, bad conditions. You hear the words, bad conditions. So I'm not going to go into a big old speech or stand on my soapbox. It's there. I just read some of it. I couldn't, there's so much to read. As they're talking, I'm there going through, looking it up as they're talking. And that's what I want my subscribers to do. I want you, every time we hear certain things on this one, you go look it up and you read it for yourself. And then you go deep and go dig, 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 dig. Because it might even be linked to your family. You don't know. You have a right to something. Okay, if you find out that your family was in these plantations, and particularly because they call us after them, right? We carried the planters' names and stuff like that. Remember, they renamed everybody. They gave them their surnames. Yeah. So yes, that's all I want to say. I don't even want to go into another space right now, because even I'm listening to this MP. I'm reading for what the MP is saying, but I'm not surprised. He's a Tory anyway. So, but in fact, it doesn't even matter whether they're Tory, Labour, whatever. They're all the same anyway. So, yeah. So I'm gonna come off my soapbox. But anyway, please leave a comment under the video. See, I made sure I redid the whole video. There's no noise, no chinka 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 in the back. So we can hear clearly exactly the case and why Barbados took this big step. They took down the Nelson statue first. Did I say Nelson? I think I said his name wrong before. They took down Lord Nelson's statue first. Then they started moving to something else. Hi, Optimus Prime. I always say your name wrong, right? But I am gonna come off, in fact, because this I can go other places. I can go and dig while I'm on here and read up on a lot of things. But the main fact is the observance. You have to pay. You have to give people where they're due. And also, I'm kind of glad that Rihanna is getting her honorary as well. I'm still glad. So I'll repeat myself. Okay, I'm glad Rihanna got the honorary. I'm happy. And even if some of us, when we was moving or when we was doing our stuff before, and then we had to stop due to funds, whatever, because really we should be living kind of okay. I believe we should be living kind of okay. Our children should be benefiting from a lot of things, especially when you trying to become self-employed and you're doing other stuff and you're feeding into the economy, those who works and all that. So, you know what, right? Uh, I don't know. I can't get my words right. I keep saying we. I know people don't like it when we say we or us or whatever, but this is clearly written. And I'm sure if you go to the British Museum, you'll see more evidence, because there is loads of evidence in the British Museum. I've been there. There's loads of evidence of stuff, shackles, this, that, and the other. But people saying slavery didn't exist and all this stuff. Okay, but then clearly all the stuff, the remnants is there. The remnants is there. Okay, the remnants is there. Right, you got Amina Castle. Personally haven't been to Amina Castle. I wish I did do it before in the early days. Right, the remnants is there. You go to the dungeons. I've watched plenty of videos where people gone into the dungeons and literally broken down crying. Plantation houses. When you watch that one was Zach, what's his name? I forgot his name. He went to a house where the slaves was kept in a basement. They was tortured. And to be honest, there was so much emotion in that space. Okay, so much emotion. I think I did put it on my face, but I can't even remember. So much emotion in that space. So obviously, it's still lingering in the air. It's still in the air. Okay, and that's why I feel blood is constantly being spilt constantly because the ongoing thing. Because people don't. I don't know. I think we find it hard to get together. Find it hard to be together. Find it hard to work together. Right. So I don't know what's all that about. It seems like when we work individually, we get shit done. When we work together, sometimes shit does happen, but on a slower basis because it all depends on the collective that is working together. Yeah. So I am not. To me, anybody who says slavery didn't exist, I don't know. I can't agree with you on that. I have to really disagree with you on that. And I know I'm gonna see loads of rubbish comments on this video, but you know what? When I see it, I'm just gonna delete you out of the remove your comment because it's quite clear it's there, right? We have post slavery syndrome. Right, it's been going on for years. Like this is 2021, and we're still talking about people who's light skin, who's darker. Oh, darker, lighter skin is better than darker skin. Oh, this that. Oh, swirlers. You know what I mean? There is still a lot going on. Still a lot going on. There's loads of Jezebels amongst us. There's a lot I can say. Right, I'm trying to not to say right now. I'm trying my best right now, because this Drax thing moved me now. You know what I mean? So if you're working together with somebody, please put good with them. Form a very good foundation. Okay, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's around the corner. Like these countries that we all come from, especially Caribbean people, West Indian people, descendants, particularly, though we're born in the UK, we are not seen as British anyway. We don't know that anyway. So I think like we need to take stock of certain things. I mean, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna carry on looking through certain things. I think, and I might do another video on this Drax estate thing. I don't know if I can't. I don't think I should do a video because I already got a video of it already. I might actually put the link into the description because I think the lady that is talking on that podcast, she is actually on a video. So, yeah, basically, I have nothing more to say. Hopefully, I won't be coming up here and giving a speech because I don't like to give speech. I'd actually like to hear other people's voices. It's not for me to be being dictator and stuff like that. So I am gonna come off. Thank you, people, for coming. Well, Christine and Sister Amma for coming, and Optimus Prime, Sister Amma. I'm not going to sit on here because it's a Saturday. I know people got stuff to do and stuff like that. Okay? So, please let me take off the... Please... Oh, no, it's not doing it now. Please like and subscribe. And also, give me your opinion. Please comment on this video. Alright? I know some people ain't gonna be happy what I just said just then, but it is what it is. Because this has been going on for years, century, even probably before my grandparents, mother, everybody come around, whatever. We just go, right, that we just go with the flow, go with the flow, go with the flow. I mean, I came out of the flow a couple times, so I know it's a fight out there. It's a fight, both sides, okay? So if you people are out there doing good on you. All right, if you're doing good and you're living good and you're flourishing where you are as a black person of color, wherever you want to term yourself, Nubian, whatever, indigenous, whatever, good on you. Because look, it's like I don't even. I think I should just stop. Actually, I think I should just stop. I'm not gonna continue what I gotta say because it's just sad. Sad for years. People, I'm not African. I'm not this. I'm not. Right, obviously they brought us over as stock to work their lands, to work certain places. Maybe in England there was maybe some type of freeness. To my understanding, there was some type of something, but it took Equianu and Wilberforce, who was on meth or something, I think he was on, to start the thing because they didn't believe it. They had to smell the ships. Apparently, you can smell the ships from a mile away, right? The dead bodies and all that stuff what they had on the ships, right? I know indigenous people have an issue with, how did the ships, where's the ships, da, 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 da. Right now where I live near Greenwich, there is a ship called the Cutty Sark, right? And I'm sure that ship carried some peoples. I guarantee it, right? When you go to certain places in London, there is certain monuments set up in certain places to certain admirals, lieutenants, you name it, right? You see it, right? It's in your face, right? And a person on Facebook explained to me that England was the currency, certain places was the currency, right? Not only that, there was a black lieutenant in Greenwich, and I think another one. One was honoured, and the other one, I can't remember whether he was done for something or the other. I did find out about that one. So I don't know who's put in place this idea, slavery wasn't there, I don't know where all this is coming from. I am American and all that. I'm not saying don't establish who you are. Don't find out who you are. You have a right to find out who you are. You do. Okay, you do. But like I said, Willie Lynch put in a letter to cause a division. It's by colour, country, something else, I can't remember, sex, and something else, and age, right? So when people put certain stuff in the way to start a wave or they say certain things, right, you have to really ask yourself where this come from. You have to ask, because I've been asking that same question for the longest time. I listen to certain people talk and certain people come with information and they would literally go in on them, and I'm like, wow. And by this time, right, even with the Omax and stuff like that, there's so much monuments around the place. You cannot miss it. You can't miss it. Okay? And whether black people It's to be empowered. I don't know what it is. I don't know what is the issue. There's an issue going on. I think there's a big issue going on. I don't want my children to be empowered by stuff that they found or found out or they know or they learn. I would not want them to not look at themselves as unempowered people, you know. So yeah, I think I've gone on a bit much now. Anyway, I'm just gonna come off before I go the next way and I start waffling, and I don't want to waffle. Okay, but anyway, let me put up Mr. Drax backside again. Yeah. So this man is living off of the backs of labours and all sorts. Okay, let's get a closer picture of him. And he's saying that it's not him, it's his family. But anyway, I'm gonna come off. I'm literally gonna come off before I go back there to that place again. Okay? So thank you for coming through, passing through, those who passed through, whatever. I know this is gonna circulate to places, people are gonna make their comments and their rude comments and all these comments, but it's alright. It's alright. You know what I mean? I'm so glad Barbados have made it. I'm glad. Let's keep the same energy. Keep it going, yeah? Jamaica, you next, yeah? Jamaica, you next. Guyana, you next. I can't all the other countries that I can't remember or think of or name off the top of my head right now. Take that initiative. Do it. Yeah? Do it. Because people are striving off your backs right now. Okay? And enjoying it. Okay, they're rebuilding England constantly, gentrification every single century or something. They're gentrifying something. Where's the money coming from? They're supposed to be in debt or something, but then all of a sudden now they're able to regenerate this and regenerate that and regenerate this, move people here, move people out of spaces, all this stuff and whatever. Yeah. So yeah. So with that said, I am gonna come off. I'm gonna take a drink of Guinness. Okay, I'm going to do what I've got to do, and yeah, I think even Guinness. I hope. Oh, I'm even gonna go check the Guinness as well. Cause I'm sure Guinness was also a plantation owned thing too. I'm sure of it. In fact, I think anything that we drink, eat, or whatever is all produced from plantations in some kind of formal fashion. Okay. So, yes, I'm going to come off. All right. So, thank you. Have a good day. Bye.